Stand perfectly still. I want to see how filthy someone like you looks dripping in real crystal." Preston Harrington III's voice dripped with contempt as he raised a goblet above Aya Morton's head. The 14-year-old's smirk widened as the Cabernet cascaded down, splashing across her face and staining her ivory gown crimson. Guests gasped, but his mother Melissa clapped like he'd performed a magic trick, phone raised to capture every humiliating second. "Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Before we begin today's story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our global family." Gregory Harrington approached with cold amusement in his eyes. "Try not to stain the marble," he murmured, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "These galas weren't designed for your kind." The crowd's nervous laughter rippled through the ballroom. But Aya didn't flinch, didn't tremble, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. None of them understood they had just drenched the one woman capable of destroying their empire with a single word. The Harrington Foundation's Centennial Gala had transformed their mansion into a palace of old money and older prejudices. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most homes cast golden light across marble imported from Italy. Women in couture gowns worth 6 figures mingled with men whose family names appeared on buildings across the city. Aya Morton had arrived as the evening's honored guest, invited to accept an award for her revolutionary work in clean energy technology. Her company, Brightwave Innovations, had spent 6 months negotiating a partnership with Harrington Energy. $650 million. The deal would have saved the Harrington empire from the financial crisis only their inner circle knew about. Aya had done her due diligence, ignored the whispers about the family's culture, focused on the business potential. She'd convinced herself one more compromise wouldn't matter. Preston had been watching her from the moment she entered. Something about her confidence, her ease in a space meant to intimidate people who looked like her, had sparked rage in his privileged teenage heart. His parents had raised him to see the world as his playground, other people as props in his performance. The help was invisible. Outsiders were tolerable only when they knew their place. Now wine dripped from Aya's jaw onto her chest, each drop a small explosion of humiliation. Her diamond earrings, a gift from her late mother, glittered beneath the red stain. The hand-bedded gown she'd commissioned from a black designer hung ruined on her frame. Camera phones appeared like fireflies, documenting her degradation for social media. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the confirmation that she didn't really belong. But Aya's face remained serene, almost peaceful. She'd grown up in neighborhoods where survival meant controlling your reactions. She'd climbed corporate ladders where showing emotion meant confirming every stereotype. Decades of being the only black woman in rooms full of hostile faces had taught her a truth more valuable than anger. Power wasn't about volume. It was about timing. She accepted a napkin from a mortified waiter and dabbed at her neck with deliberate slowness. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and thick. Preston's smirk began to waver. He'd expected tears, screaming, a spectacle he could mock for years at private school. Instead, she looked at him with something close to pity. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying in the shocked quiet. "You've just made my decision remarkably easy." Confusion flickered across his face. Aya moved past him, toward the stage where she was scheduled to speak, her heels clicking against marble with measured precision. Wine continued dripping from her dress, leaving a trail of dark spots behind her. The crowd parted like she was contagious. She climbed the stairs to the podium, feeling every eye track her movement. The spotlight was merciless, highlighting every stain, every drop still sliding down her arm. But her spine remained straight as steel, her shoulders squared with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire from nothing. The microphone amplified her first breath. "Good evening," she began. "I had prepared remarks about partnership and shared vision for the future. But recent events require a different message." In the crowd below, Gregory Harrington's smile died slowly. His wife's phone lowered as understanding began to dawn. Preston stood frozen, the empty goblet still dangling from his fingers. Effective immediately, Aya's voice was clear as breaking glass. Brightwave Innovations is terminating all negotiations with Harrington Energy Group. The proposed $650 million partnership is canceled. Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. Melissa's face drained of color. Gregory lurched forward, pushing through the crowd, but Aya wasn't finished. Our company values include integrity, respect, and dignity for all people. She looked directly at Preston. We choose partners based on demonstrated alignment with these principles. Tonight has made abundantly clear that this alignment does not exist. Gregory reached the front of the crowd, face purple with rage, but dozens of cameras were recording. He couldn't make a scene. Not here. Not now. To quote someone in this room, Aya continued, her eyes finding Gregory's, boys will be boys. And companies will be companies. We all make choices. We all face consequences. I choose to walk away from toxicity, no matter how profitable the alternative. Her gaze swept the room, landing on faces she recognized from the business pages. How many of them had made similar compromises? How many had stayed silent while people like the Harringtons crushed anyone different? I wish you all a lovely evening, she concluded, stepping back from the podium. The walk to the exit felt endless. Every eye burned into her back, but Aya kept her pace steady, her head high, her dignity intact. Behind her, the Harringtons stood in rows as phones lit up with breaking news alerts. Their son's cruelty had cost them everything. The night air hit her face like a baptism. Her driver pulled up instantly, and she slid into the car's leather interior. Only then did her hands begin to shake. Only then did she allow herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. She'd walked away from the biggest deal of her career. She'd made an enemy of one of the city's most powerful families. She'd chosen principle over profit. Her phone erupted with notifications. News outlets, board members, investors, all demanding explanations. But there was one message that made her pause. It was from an unknown number with a local area code. The text was simple and direct. Ms. Morton, my name is Eleanor Reed. I worked for the Harrington family for 27 years. What you did tonight took courage. I have information you need to see. Things they've buried. Things that prove tonight wasn't an isolated incident. Meet me tomorrow. It's time someone held them accountable. Aya read it twice, her business instincts analyzing every word. This wasn't a crank message. The tone was too formal, too precise. Someone inside the Harrington empire wanted to talk. She typed a response. 8 a.m. at Brightwave Tower. Tell security you're meeting me. The reply came instantly. Thank you. You're not alone in this fight anymore. The car pulled into her building's private garage. Aya's security team had already doubled their presence, anticipating media attention. In her penthouse, she finally peeled off the ruined gown, letting it pool on the floor like a shed skin. The hot shower washed away the wine, but it couldn't erase the memory of their laughter, Preston's entitled sneer, the phones recording her humiliation. But as she wrapped herself in a silk robe and looked out at the city lights, something shifted in her chest. She'd spent her career playing by their rules, accepting their compromises, telling herself progress meant patience. Tonight she'd stopped compromising. Tonight she'd used the only power that mattered. The power to say no, the power to walk away, the power to choose her own worth over their approval. Morning arrived with harsh sunlight and harsher headlines. Harrington Energy stock had already dropped 12% in overseas trading. Business networks were running the video on loop, analyzing her decision from every angle. Some praised her integrity, others questioned her judgment. But everyone was talking, everyone was watching. The Harringtons had made her a symbol. Eleanor Reed arrived at exactly 8 a.m., her silver hair perfectly styled, her clothing pressed to perfection. She carried a weathered leather satchel that looked like it had survived decades. The moment Aya saw her face, lined with years of quiet dignity, she knew this woman was the real thing. Someone who'd spent a lifetime watching, waiting, documenting. They met in Aya's private conference room. Eleanor opened her satchel with trembling hands, and withdrew stack after stack of journals, each one filled with meticulous handwriting. 27 years, she said softly. Every racist comment, every harassment complaint they buried, every person they destroyed for sport. I wrote it all down because I knew someday someone would need proof. The journals were organized by date, each entry marked with time and location. Aya opened one at random and found an entry from 15 years earlier describing how Gregory Harrington had fired a pregnant black employee to avoid paying maternity leave, then blacklisted her across the industry. The next page detailed Melissa mocking a housekeeper's accent until the woman quit in tears. But Eleanor's documentation went far deeper than cruel behavior. She'd photographed financial records showing years of embezzlement. She'd recorded conversations about bribing building inspectors and manipulating environmental reports. She'd kept evidence of the Harringtons paying off accusers and threatening witnesses. The family's entire empire was built on corruption, and Eleanor had documented every brick. Why now, Aya asked gently, after keeping this for so long? Eleanor's hands tightened around her coffee cup. My granddaughter sent me the video last night, watching you stand there covered in wine while they laughed. Her voice cracked. I saw myself 30 years ago, staying quiet to keep my job, to protect my family. But you didn't stay quiet. You walked away. You chose dignity. I'm 74 years old. I'm done being afraid. They spent hours reviewing the evidence. Eleanor's journals read like an indictment, each page revealing new layers of systematic abuse. But the financial documents were the real weapon. The Harringtons had been embezzling from their own company for years, using shell corporations and fraudulent accounting to hide the theft. The $650 million deal with Brightwave wasn't about partnership. It was about covering their tracks before the next audit. Aya photographed every page, uploaded every file to secure servers, sent encrypted copies to her lawyers. This wasn't just ammunition for a corporate fight. This was evidence of crimes spanning decades. Tax evasion, fraud, witness tampering, conspiracy. The Harringtons had operated like a criminal enterprise disguised as a dynasty. By noon, news broke that Gregory Harrington was filing a defamation lawsuit. He appeared on courthouse steps looking somber in an expensive suit, claiming Aya had manufactured a racial incident to void a binding contract. He called her emotionally unstable, said she had a history of volatile behavior, suggested she wasn't mentally fit to run a company. Every word was a calculated attack designed to destroy her credibility before she could expose them. The media coverage shifted instantly. Suddenly, commentators were debating her mental state instead of Preston's cruelty. Talking heads questioned whether she'd overreacted, whether she had anger management issues, whether a good CEO would make such an emotional decision. The racist dog whistles were obvious to anyone listening. Angry black woman, unstable, unqualified, the same tired stereotypes used to dismiss and diminish. Aya's phone rang constantly. Board members demanding explanations, partners requesting emergency meetings, investors expressing concern about her judgment. The financial pressure mounted as 3 major clients suspended their contracts pending investigation. Harrington's legal and media machine was working exactly as designed, burying the truth under an avalanche of manufactured doubt. That night, protesters gathered outside Brightwave Tower. Some held signs supporting Aya. Others waved banners calling her a race baiter and a fraud. Police formed barriers between the groups as news helicopters circled overhead. Aya stood at her office window, watching the chaos, feeling the weight of an empire trying to crush her into silence. But she wasn't silent. She was preparing. While the Harringtons attacked, she and her team were building an irrefutable case. Digital forensics experts analyzed every document Eleanor provided. Lawyers verified each claim against public records. Investigators tracked down former Harrington employees willing to corroborate the abuse. The truth was forming like a tsunami, gathering power before it crashed. At 2 a.m., Aya received another anonymous message. This time it contained internal Harrington emails from the past 24 hours. Frantic messages about destroying documents. orders to delete files, conversations about bribing journalists and intimidating witnesses. The Harringtons were panicking, and their panic was creating even more evidence. She forwarded everything to her legal team with a single instruction: prepare for total war, because that's what this had become. Not a business dispute, but a battle for truth itself. The Harringtons represented generations of people who believed power meant never facing consequences, who thought money could buy immunity from morality, who built empires on the backs of people they considered beneath them. Morning arrived with more attacks. Conservative media outlets ran stories about Aya's mother's decades-old arrest for passing a bad check during a medical emergency, spinning it into a narrative about criminal families and inherited instability. Liberal outlets defended her, but focused on respectability politics, praising her education and achievements as if she needed credentials to deserve basic human dignity. The board called an emergency meeting. Aya walked into that conference room knowing some members wanted her gone, wanted to appease the Harringtons, wanted the easy path back to stability, but she also knew she held all the cards. The evidence Eleanor provided was a nuclear weapon, and everyone at that table knew she could detonate it. She laid out the choice clearly: stand with me while we expose decades of corruption, or try to remove me and watch your stock price collapse when I release everything independently. The vote was unanimous. Even those who doubted her understood the mathematics of mutually assured destruction. Aya Morton stayed CEO. Victory in the boardroom meant little when the Harringtons launched their cruelest tactic yet. Preston appeared on national television, crying as he claimed Aya had threatened him before the gala. They released a grainy hallway video that seemed to show her confronting him. It was entirely fabricated, but convincing enough to seed doubt exactly what they needed. Social media erupted, news outlets dissected the footage, and Preston's tearful face looped nonstop. That night, A's home was attacked. Slurs were sprayed across her door, her garden destroyed, photographers swarmed her street, while police did nothing. The assault had shifted from smearing her name to invading her life. She retreated to her panic room, watching the damage on security feeds as her composure, carefully built over decades, finally shattered. She wept, not from fear, but from exhaustion and the burden of carrying dignity through endless disrespect. By morning, grief hardened into resolve. Aya realized she had spent years playing by rules created to keep her small. That era was over. At dawn, she phoned her team. A live press conference. No scripts, no delays. She would present everything Eleanor's evidence, the financial crimes, the fabricated video, and let the world judge the truth for itself. The press conference took place on a hastily constructed outdoor stage. Hundreds of cameras pointed up at Aya as she stood in a crisp white suit, the opposite of her wine-stained gown. Behind her, a massive screen displayed evidence as she spoke. She walked the world through Preston's fake video frame by frame, highlighting the doctored timestamps and impossible reflections that proved manipulation. Then Eleanor joined her on stage, carrying her journals like sacred texts. The elderly woman's voice shook but held firm as she read entry after entry documenting decades of abuse. Recordings played of Gregory Harrington ordering document destruction and discussing illegal payments. Financial experts presented evidence of massive embezzlement. The case built like a prosecution, each piece of evidence reinforcing the last. Aya spoke with unwavering clarity. This wasn't about spilled wine or a ruined deal. It was about a system that protected corruption dressed in wealth. As she finished, federal vehicles closed in on Harrington Energy. The investigations her team had quietly prepared were now in motion. News exploded. Gregory Harrington was arrested on camera while trying to flee. Melissa was cuffed in her mansion, their connections suddenly worthless. Preston was pulled from school for evaluation. The company's stock crashed, partners vanished, and the Harrington empire imploded. From her office, Aya watched decades of hidden abuses finally exposed. But she wasn't chasing revenge, she was building transformation. With Brightwave's support, she launched the Eleanor Reed Justice Institute, turning a vacant bank into a haven for whistleblowers and workers facing retaliation. When the institute opened, Eleanor stood before her name, etched in stone, tears falling as she witnessed justice she thought she'd never see. Aya later accepted a civil rights award in the same ballroom where she'd once been humiliated. This time she walked in to applause. She told the truth. Real power isn't inherited. It's refusing to bow to injustice. The Harrington dynasty collapsed. Aya's legacy rose proof that dignity can't be stolen, only reclaimed. Because in the end, Preston Harrington didn't pour wine on a victim. He poured it on a revolution. And revolutions don't break. They burn until everything false is reduced to ash, leaving only truth standing in the light.